Van Brocklin hurls across down the middle. Ted Dean makes the catch and a rapid look. And a heart-stopping finish. Bobby Walston boots a 38-yard field goal.
He is looking. He tries to go long. He throws it. He's got a man open.
This is where the final chapter was written, here at Franklin Field on the Penn campus. This is where the Eagles defeated the Green Bay Packers 50 years ago to become world champions. I was here that day, and I'll never forget it. How it felt, how it sounded, and how it lifted the entire city. The story ended here, but it began that summer at training camp in Hershey, where even a very young fan could tell these Eagles were about to take flight. Pro football heroes are larger than life, and that was especially true with the 1960 Eagles.
If you look back at that team, it was a strange team in terms of being a championship team. You tend to think of NFL championship teams, particularly from that era, as having a great defense and a great running game. Well, the Eagles really had neither.
I think that team had a bunch of personalities. I didn't say a bunch of talent, but they had a chemistry, and a chemistry can win games.
The team was a funny team. I mean, we always thought we were better than what we were, and we played better.
Whether we were down at halftime, whether we were behind in any of the games that we played, we never gave that a thought. We never gave it a thought at that time that we might lose this game.
Everybody called us the mystery team. All we could do was win.
The Eagles had won championships back in the late 40s, I think 48 and 49. They won NFL championships with Greasy Neal. They had a tough decade throughout the 50s, and then in 58, I think it was, Vince McNally, who was their general manager at the time, had worked with Buck Shaw out in St. Mary's College in California. And they were both Notre Dame guys. And McNally always said that if he ever got in control of an NFL team, he'd like to have Buck Shaw as his coach. And so in 58, they brought Buck Shaw here. And that was the same year that they traded for Norm Van Brocklin, who turned out to be the key player on that championship team.
The team also had talented rookies like fullback Ted Dean and linebacker Maxie Baum. They all gathered for training camp in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Hershey was a great training camp. Not too far from Philadelphia, but just far enough so that we could concentrate on football.
That was a fantastic place. The Eagles knew what they were doing when they took us down there because it was really isolated.
You didn't have 15 to 20,000 people watching every practice session.
That was really different for me because I went to the University of Oklahoma, and I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, so I really wasn't used to a lot of woods and stuff like that, and I thought, why here? And then it was fantastic. After 2 or 3 days, I thought, this is a fantastic place.
Well, Hershey was a great place to practice. The smell of chocolate wore off after a few days, but at the beginning, boy, all you could smell was the chocolate.
We lived right in the middle of Hershey, and we were there for quite a number of years. It was like the second home almost.
Hershey went all out for us, giving us all the facilities that we needed.
I think one thing I always think of is after practice going in the ice skating rink and laying on the ice and just cooling.
The 1960 Eagles were a team with a lot of new faces and much to prove.
When you're at Hershey, you can be cut. And I was just worried about whether I was going to be able to make the team. I was just hoping that I was able to perform like they thought that I could, because I don't want them to have a question mark on my athletic ability.
The veterans usually don't take to the new guys very readily until they've proven their worth. That's the way it was with the Philadelphia Eagles at training camp. These guys came in sometimes with all-American reputations, and we wanted them to prove that they were going to be a compliment to the ball club. And once that happened, and once they made their presence known in a positive way, they were accepted by the veterans, and they became sort of one of us. We established some very close ties up there in Hershey.
The team was built on the practice field, but the chemistry was built off the field and throughout the season.
One of the things that made the team, I think, as strong as it was the fact that we had a very strong social bond. Mondays was the players' day off after they played Sunday. A lot of guys lived in the Walnut Park Plaza Hotel, which is at 63rd and Walnut Street, West Philadelphia. And there was a nice little tavern out there. And a lot of the players used to go there on Mondays just on their own.
Mondays was the day we collect our paycheck, we'd go down, get our check, come back to the plaza, go across the street to the watering hole and spend the rest of the money there. And that was more or less, you know, a ritual. Go down, get your check, cash it, come back up and have some beer with the guys.
Most of the team was there. They'd have a couple of beers and a hamburger or something and get stuff out of their systems, you know, and that was a big item, keeping the team together like that.
We became a family. Everybody was family. That's what we were, you know. It was just fantastic.
We were a team, and that's what we weren't 37 or 38 individual ball players. We were a team, and I think that's what it takes to put everything together and to win in the National Football League.
They were clearly a hard-drinking, hard-working, blue-collar team. They developed a kind of camaraderie that I think came out in those close games. I mean, this is a team that won 6 or 7 games by a touchdown or less. And it was that closeness, that bond they developed in these barroom sessions or in these long nights. These guys did develop a real chemistry, and I think that chemistry was the key to their winning a championship.
Chemistry starts with leadership, and the Eagles' leader was quarterback Norm Van Brockman.
He was definitely the leader of the team. He was definitely a coach on the field.
He knew his football, and he was a great, needless to say, was a great quarterback.
Well, we responded to Van Brockman because when he came to us, he was an established quarterback with the Los Angeles Rams at the time.
He was definitely the guy that was running the team.
Passmaster Norm Van Brockman looks for Tommy McDonald downfield, fires a long completion, and Tom tumbles into the end zone for an Eagle touchdown.
I guess I was really lucky that I didn't worry about a quarterback. We had Sonny Jurgensen as a backup, and that's hard to believe that we had 2 All-Pro Hall of Fame quarterbacks on the same team.
All the players looked up to Van Brockman. He had a great reputation as a passer and as a leader. We used to kid about him being a coach. The players would say, old Buck Shaw would do was flip the ball to Van Brockman Sunday morning and said, here, Dutch, win. Buck Shaw, our coach, gave Van Brockman the authority to be a coach on the field. And if you were screwing up, he had the authority to send you to the bench.
He just says, guys, just run your patterns, get open, I'll get the ball there. And boy, was he right. He put it right on the money.
Dutch was not only a quarterback, but he was our punter. He was one of the top punters in the league.
There wasn't any doubt that he was the pivotal player on the 1960 team. The greatest line that's ever been said about that team and that season was that Van Brockman refused to allow us to lose. He wouldn't let us lose, and that's leadership.
Another leader was the team's oldest player, 35-year-old Chuck Bednarik, who would be playing 60 minutes a game by season's end.
Chuck Bednarik was just a great football player. I mean, absolutely. That term great is overworked, but boy, he was the best. He was absolutely sensational. Chuck led by example, I think, more than anything else. I don't think he was telling us what to do or what not to do. Probably wasn't any better example as a defensive linebacker than Chuck. In this 1960 championship game, at the age of 35, he played both ways. He played offensive center and linebacker, and he was some linebacker.
I was born in poverty in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I played high school football, then college.
Pennsylvania's All-American center. The Eagles are counting on him, so fans should better.
Then to play professional football and make money? Wow, I was born into the Depression. We had to go to family welfare for food and clothes. And here I play a sport that I enjoyed, and I was getting paid.
Bednarik was a 5-time All-Pro, yet he still had to work a second job to support his family.
Chuck Bednarik was a big help to me is I went to work with him with Warner Concrete. We both worked for Warner.
That's where he got the name Concrete Charlie. He had to go to work in the off-season to support his family.
We would practice in the morning, and we got done around 11:30, 12 o'clock. I'd have a sandwich, and then I went to work selling concrete. So it was two jobs, playing with the Eagles and selling concrete for the Warner Company. And I love the idea. People say he's as tough as the concrete that he sold.
Chuck was Chuck. He was the guy that everybody looked up to as far as the D. I think he and Brookshaw probably were the two everybody looked up to. And the defense, they were a big part of all our wins. I mean, they got us the ball back, and then Norm Bracklin and Tommy would go to work and end up winning the games.
He was all football. He was just the football player.
The free spirit on the team was flanker Tommy McDonald, a 5'9" jackrabbit with the heart of a lion.
Tommy McDonald came here with a spotless reputation. In 4 years at Oklahoma, he never played in a losing game.
I came up as a halfback out of Oklahoma, drafted as a halfback. But about the 7th game in the season, a receiver got hurt, and they put me out there to see how I could do. Well, I surprised them and scored 3 touchdowns. So they thought, well, we better make a receiver out of Tommy McDonald.
Van Brocklin used to call him Squeaky. That was his name for McDonald. I remember him telling me one time, in the middle of the season, he said, when Squeaky comes back to the huddle and tells you I've got so-and-so beat, the quarterback only has to do one thing, to get him the ball. He'll take care of the rest.
Van Brocklin fakes to his left, but sets his sights on Tommy McDonald, who arrived just in the nick of time to pull in the pass and make it all the way to the 1.
Tommy was some player, I'll tell you. Buck Shaw was a great head coach. He oversaw the whole program. He delegated a lot of authority to his assistants.
Buck Shaw was essentially a new type coach for me. Previous coaches had always been pretty strict, and Buck Shaw was very easygoing.
He just was absolutely the type of person that knew when he had to say something to you, and he knew when he better not say something to you.
I just felt that he was one of the nicest gentlemen that I'd ever met in the game of pro football. The only thing that I could say about him that I found was a little unusual, he had this nice white gray hair that he had on, and it was perfectly in place. Every little hair was in perfect place. And if a cloud was coming up in the horizon, it looked like it might rain, Buck would say, all right, let's take it in. Let's call practice today. He didn't want to get wet.
The 1960 Eagles were an uncommon team, but with a common purpose. They wanted to be champions.
Having that kind of leadership on the team and falling into it like I did, I couldn't help but have aspirations of winning. We were all in there together.
Coming up, the Eagles season begins with a brownout. The Eagles won back-to-back world championships in 1948 and 49. But the 1950s brought a steep decline. The team went through 6 head coaches in 9 seasons and won just 2 games in 1958. But 2 years later, led by Coach Buck Shaw and quarterback Norm Van Brocklin, the Eagles were a team with championship aspirations.
The Philadelphia Eagles and the Cleveland Browns draw the largest crowd ever to witness a pro game in Philadelphia's Franklin Field.
Well, the first game was the Browns, I believe, and they really kind of blew us out. And it's embarrassing almost.
Norm Van Brocklin passes for the Eagles on their first series of downs. It's picked off by Bernie Parrish and returned all the way to the Philadelphia 31.
We got our rear ends kicked.
Brown and Mitchell are making a shambles of the Eagle defense. Fullback Jim Brown dives the final yard, and it's 14-3 at the end of the first period.
I believe the score was something like 40-something to 24.
I was speechless because I couldn't believe that we got beat.
Coach was really pissed off. I mean, he said, there's no way in the world that you score 24 points on a team, you're supposed to beat them. He says, if you don't turn it around, we're not going anyplace.
The next game we played the Dallas Cowboys, a team that we really felt We should have come away with an easy win.
We're going to go and play an expansion team. They're supposed to lay down, and we can just walk over.
It's a long rollout pass to Frank Clark, and Frank has his man beaten to scamper in for a 75-yard touchdown.
Everyone that thinks about the Eagles-Cowboys rivalry, this was the first game in that series.
Bill Barnes comes across and takes the outside route to a touchdown.
We just didn't do a very good job in that game either. We won by a couple of points.
If it hadn't been for those 2 block kicks, we would have been embarrassed. And we were embarrassed anyway.
The Eagles earned their first 1960 victory by the margin of the 2 extra point tries blocked by Bobby Freeman.
Here you had a team starting out the season with a loss to Cleveland, barely beat Dallas, who would not win a game that season. They were 0-11-1, I think, in 1960. So there was little reason to believe that this is going to be a special season. And then they kind of caught fire.
The Eagles show their claws. Norm Van Brocklin sets his sights on Pete Retzlaff and hits him with a touchdown toss.
In weeks 3 and 4, the Eagles won comfortably over St. Louis and Detroit, led by an opportunistic defense.
The older players, the Marion Campbells, the Tom Brookshires, the Don Burrows, those guys, they knew how to win. They knew what it took to win, and they were translating that to all of the younger guys.
Earl Morrall tries to get the Lions going as he passes in the 4th quarter, but Don Burrows turns the tables with an interception for the Eagles.
That's the only reason we won defensively, is because we had guys like that could keep us on an even keel and help us stay in the ballgame.
I think the whole team just sort of came together and said, you know, we're not going to have a repeat of the years that we had before. We're only winning a couple of ball games, and you know, we started putting out what we thought we had the potential to do, and that's a big difference. We had a lot of talented players on that ball club, and all we had to do was put it together.
The Eagles were climbing, but next up was a rematch with the first-place Cleveland Browns.
In order for us to go any further, we had to beat Cleveland.
Almost 65,000 Cleveland Brown fans are massed in windswept Municipal Stadium to watch their undefeated heroes tangle with the Philadelphia Eagles.
So going out there was more or less of a must game.
The Big Birds are out to prove that today will be different. Norm Van Brocklin emphasizes just how different as he passes on the Eagles' first play from scrimmage. Bobby Walston makes the catch in full stride, keeps his balance, and scores on a 49-yard play.
When you play a Paul Brown team, they were the best. And we knew going out there that they could kick our rear end again.
The parade to the goal line. The 86-yard play boosts the Browns into a 12-7 lead.
Needless to say, it was a hell of a ball game.
After stopping the Browns on 4 downs, the Eagles engineer another lightning strike.
It was a game of big plays, with momentum swinging back and forth. It came down to one last Van Brocklin-led drive, setting up a field goal attempt by Bobby Walston.
We felt that we could get it close and we could hold them, that Bobby could win the game for us.
I think it was probably around 39 or 40, maybe 42 yards, and that's, you know, Bobby kicked it well, but he didn't have that strong a leg.
When we lined up for a field goal, I said, oh man, this is not going to work, and Bobby can't kick it that far.
In a heart-stopping finish, Bobby Walston boots a 38-yard field goal that barely clears the bar with 16 seconds left in the game, and the Eagles win.
Bobby Walston kicked a field goal that won that ball game at a distance that I never thought Bobby could do it. That's just what it takes for Bobby to step up a notch or two, and he did, and he kicked it, and he got the distance, and we won the ball game.
It was a big win. If we don't win that one, we don't go anyplace.
The Eagles triumph 31-29 to stay in the thick of the Eastern Conference Championship race.
Bobby Walston's against-all-odds field goal took the Eagles from overachievers to true believers in their quest for a championship. Bobby Walston's field goal was the turning point of that season, but it was also a turning point for pro football in Philadelphia. The week before that Cleveland game, the Eagles drew 38,000 for a home game against Detroit. The week after the Cleveland game, the Eagles drew 58,000 for a game against Pittsburgh. The line at the Franklin Field box office told the story. The Eagles were suddenly the hottest ticket in town.
They sort of piqued everyone's interest. The newspaper coverage had picked up, even on TV. Maybe they got a little better spot during the sportscast.
We would have lines blocks long, literally 3 blocks long in Center City. We would tie up the traffic, so the demand was becoming greater and greater as time went on.
It wasn't just the fact that they were winning, but it was how they won that captivated the fans.
We had some games that seemed hopelessly lost, and they battled their butt off every week.
The Philadelphia Eagles tied for the lead at the summit of the Eastern Conference, attract the largest home crowd since 1950, as 58,324 packed Franklin Field for their key battle with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Eagles took first place with wins over Pittsburgh and Washington, setting the stage for back-to-back games against their bitter rival and closest pursuer, the New York Giants.
The Philadelphia Eagles, currently leading the Eastern Conference, move into Yankee Stadium for one of the biggest battles of the season with the second-place New York Giants.
We went up there knowing that we had to win the ball game.
Well, we were playing on their home field, but we felt we could play with them.
The reality of it, the football game, the Eagles hadn't won a game up there nearly my lifetime.
George Shaw begins the fireworks with a high-arching bomb to Kyle Road, and 63,000 fans see the Giants threaten early.
The Giants struck quickly, taking a 10-0 lead. Their blitzing defense swarmed and frustrated Norm Van Brocklin. But in the second half, he fired back.
In the third quarter, Norm Van Brocklin looks for Tommy McDonald downfield, fires a long completion, and Tom tumbles into the end zone for an Eagle touchdown.
The Eagles took their first lead when cornerback Jimmy Carr returned a fumble for a touchdown. But the Giants would mount one final drive, and on that drive, we would witness one of the biggest hits in NFL history.
Well, 1960, in New York Yankee Stadium, the favorite football player there was Frank Gifford.
Frank Gifford was New York's big star, but at 180 pounds, he wasn't big enough to take on Chuck Bednarik.
I hit him head on, killed him.
When Chuck tackled somebody, he put them down and they stayed down.
He fumbles the ball. Chuck Weber recovers the ball.
Then we knew that we had won the football game. We were all celebrating, including Chuck. Yeah, he kind of looked like he was gloating, but he wasn't really.
He's talking about this game is over, we've won this game.
He'd been up there enough times and had his rear end kicked that it was nice to win.
Really surprises me how many people bring up Bednarik's hit on Gifford. I still hear about it, and they embellish it to the point where it kind of jars you a little bit.
If you're going to do anything big, do it in New York.
It was a tough ball game, and we knew we had to win it, and we did. And more or less, just like we did every other one, it was always, very, very close.
The New York Giants invade Philadelphia for a second shot at the high-flying Eagles.
The Giants wanted to win this one for the Gifford, and they jumped to a 17-0 lead. But once again, the Eagles saved their best for last.
On the first play of the fourth quarter, Norm Van Brocklin hurls a toss down the middle. Ted Dean makes the catch, and the rapid rookie rockets for the goal line to complete a 51-yard scoring play that puts the Eagles on top for the first time in the game, 24-23.
Van Brocklin and his receivers who, drank together, who kind of played around together, just developed this really tight-knit bond, and I think you could see it in these close games. It really helped them.
The daring Dutchman fakes beautifully to Dean, then lobs a pass to Billy Barnes. Barnes scores to give the Eagles a 31-23 victory over the Giants, featured by a brilliant comeback from a 17-point deficit. The Eagles need only one victory in the remaining 3 games to clinch their first Eastern Conference crown in 11 years.
That's the type of thing that builds. You just feel that, well, no matter who scores against you and how often they score against you in the first part of the game, or the first half, or the first 3 quarters, there's still time for you to make amends and come back and win the ball game. And we just believed in that.
At 8-1, the Eagles went to St. Louis with a chance to clinch the Eastern Conference title.
A powder keg explodes when John Roach has an aerial bomb swiped by Don Burrows of the Eagles. While the Cardinals are deciding whether the ball is dead, the Eagle defensive halfback proves he's very much alive by returning 46 yards to the Cards' 17.
The defense stifled the Cardinals, and fittingly, the combination of Van Brocklin to McDonald put the game away.
Norm Van Brocklin has the arm while Tommy McDonald has the angle, and together they give Philadelphia their second touchdown of the day. The scoring ends with a 20-6 victory over the Cardinals, and the Eagles fly home with their first Eastern Conference title since 1949. The Eastern Conference champs are looking ahead for the meeting with the Western Conference winner.
We had to win a game, and we did. That got us in there.
The impact of what we had accomplished so far really hit in when our charter flight pulled up at the airport, and there were 15,000 fans that were out on the tarmac waiting for us to deplane.
Two meaningless regular season games remained, so backups like quarterback Sonny Jurgensen and running back Timmy Brown got a chance to showcase their talents.
Sonny escapes with his scalp and completes a jump pass to Tim Brown.
By the next to last week of the season, they had clinched the Eastern Conference, and so you knew they were going to be playing in the championship game. And there was only one, the playoffs then consisted of one game, the NFL championship game.
I think everybody on our team was ready to play, and we had to be ready to play a good team like Green Bay.
The Eagles completed a 10-2 regular season, but there was only one thing on their minds.
We're going to have to beat those Green Bay Packers. Let's put it on them.
The Eagles are about to play the biggest game of their lives.
The Eagles met the Packers for the championship on December 26th. The NFL would not play on Christmas Day back then, so the championship game was played here on a Monday afternoon. By league rule, the telecast was blacked out in Philadelphia, so if you didn't have a ticket, you didn't see the game. My parents and I had tickets. We paid $5 a piece to sit here in the East Stands and watch the Eagles play the Packers.
Franklin Field in Philadelphia, one of the finest football stadiums in the country, is the arena for this World Championship struggle.
Heading into that Christmas week, there was a lot of anticipation for that game.
It was a cold day, the day after Christmas.
People say, well, they're playing the Packers. That must have been great. Well, the Packers weren't the Packers yet. Vince Lombardi was their coach. They hadn't won a championship yet.
Vince Lombardi was not the great kingpin that he had became later on. But everybody was wrapped up in the game.
There had been some snow earlier in the week, so there were still vestiges of snow around. The game was played on a Monday at noon, which sounds totally illogical, but it was because there were a couple of reasons. One, Christmas Day was Sunday, so they didn't want to play on Christmas. Two, they had to play at noon because there weren't any lights at Franklin Field, and it's the shortest days of the year occurred during that week.
As game time draws near, more than 70,000 onlookers provide a colorful background for the battle.
Well, Franklin Field at the time held 60,658. For some reason or other, I'd never forgotten that number, but we had to get a higher capacity for that particular game. And so around the horseshoe, which is Franklin Field is shaped like, around the horseshoe we put additional bleachers down there. Now, they were pretty bad seats. They were behind the benches and whatever, but people were doing anything that they could to try to get into that game. And so that was an additional 7,000 seats, and we had to get extra tickets printed for them, and the demand ate them up right away. We were sold out well in advance of the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles are about to play the biggest game of their lives, and there'll be bedlam coming out over your loudspeakers for the next several hours.
It was really cold that day, but I can't recall even being the least bit cold or even thinking about how cold it was.
You're concentrating on what you're trying to do and getting ready to execute what you're going to be responsible for.
Three future Hall of Famers, Norm Van Brocklin, Chuck Bednarik, and Green Bay center Jim Ringo met for the coin toss, setting the stage for an epic championship game. Although it didn't start that way for the Eagles, who turned it over on their first play from scrimmage.
On first down, Van Brocklin throws a swing pass to Billy Barnes. Bill Quinlan intercepts, and it's first down Green Bay at the Eagle 14.
We didn't really start off that good.
Jim Taylor finds daylight and romps through for 5 yards to the 9-yard line.
They had the ball on about the 2 or 3 yard line. On fourth down, they went for a first down. We held them.
We had 2 turnovers right in the first of the ball game.
A diving tackle by Ray Nitschke forces Dean to fumble.
The next series we fumbled, we didn't get it in. They got a field goal.
They could have come out of there 14-0, and it turned out that it was only 3-0.
And I guess that shook everybody up.
Paul Hornung kicked a second field goal to give Green Bay a 6-0 lead. The Eagles' offense knew it was up to them.
When the defense was out there, Van Brockman and a bunch of us started talking, and we're saying, hey, guys, let's get the ball in the end zone.
Eagle fans begin to get restless as Van Brockman hits Mcdonald sliding across the middle. The Eagle speed merchant races to the Packer 39 before he's stopped by Hank Grimminger.
Norm he knew that we could get a touchdown, and he just said, go for it, Tommy.
1st and 10 on Green Bay's 35. Here's Van Brockman back to throw. He is looking, he tries to go long. He throws it, he's got a man open. It is Mcdonald, touchdown.
He just decided, I guess, to try and get me the ball, and he did. And I put it in the end zone, and I slipped down and rolled in the ground and all that sort of jazz, and I thought, get up, so you can show to the fans that you got in the end zone. And I got up to there, and the fans up there, and that was really tremendous.
Tommy had a way of getting open that nobody else had.
The big bomb can often overcome a lot of ball control, and Van Brockman threw the home run.
It was a great touchdown by Tommy, and Van Brockman did a tremendous job getting it in his hands, just laid it right in there for him.
A Bobby Walston field goal extended the Eagles' lead.
Chuck Bednarik forces Hornung inside.
Chuck Bednarik played every snap, offense and defense, and helped keep the Packers out of the end zone through 3 quarters.
On the last play of the 3rd quarter, Starr keeps the Packers moving as he connects with Gary Knoppel on the Eagle 32. With only 15 minutes remaining, Philadelphia leads Green Bay 10-6.
Green Bay, with 5 future Hall of Famers on offense, answered the challenge and regained the lead.
Tom refuses to go down until he's gained 12 yards and a first down at the Eagle 22. Bart Starr fires to Max McGee, slanting into the end zone for a Green Bay touchdown.
The 1960 Eagles were a big play team, and they needed another big play to save the day. The Eagles trailed Green Bay 13-10 in the 4th quarter. But what I remember is no one was worried. The Eagles were coming from behind to win games all season, and we were confident that they would do it again. The Lombardi Packers were one of pro football's all-time great teams, but that day, on this field, the Eagles were better.
Paul Hornung kicks off for Green Bay. Ted Dean takes it on the 2. The Eagles clear an alley for Ted up the left side.
The kickoff that Ted Dean received, that was a play that was formulated.
Tim Brown, number 22, leads the way for Dean. Willie Wood finally pushes Dean out of bounds on the Packer 39, a 59-yard return.
Ted Dean ran that kickoff back 50-some yards, and that sparked us up.
The Packers continue their violent rush, but Van Brockman flips a quickie to Billy Barnes. Billy gets 13
Ted
yards.
Dean didn't have a rushing touchdown all season. What better time than that?
Ted Dean is red hot, and Van Brockman knows it. Norm sends the rookie on a sweep around left end. Jerry Hoot throws the key block, and Dean drives in for the score.
Ted runs it in on a sweep with Jerry Hoot leading it.
Ted Dean, there's only one Ted Dean, and I'm telling you, that guy was a great, great fullback.
He had strength of character. He was the type of ball player that exemplified the rest of the ball club.
The game and the season came down to one final Green Bay drive, with the Eagles' defense desperately trying to hold on.
The punt is taken by Lou Carpenter. Lou is hit hard by Gene Gossage. It's now or never for Bart Starr and the Green Bay Packers.
We had scored, but then Green Bay was driving. They needed 7 points. We were doing everything we could to stop them, but the ball just kept going toward our goal line.
Yard play that gives the Green Bay Packers a first down on the Eagle 30-yard line.
It's scary. Would see them come down the field. They were a very talented team, and they were coming down the field, and they were driving and driving.
What an electrifying finish to a great season and a great game. Starr's up over the ball. This will be it. Starr's back to throw. He takes time. He throws over the middle. It's caught at the 15. Running hard to the 7-yard line. And down on the 7 is Jim Taylor. The game's over. The game's over. The Eagles are the champions of the world. Listen.
stadium erupted. Every level erupted.
We're running around, screaming, yelling, hugging each other.
The explosion kind of had a natural progression and just popped when they won a championship.
It couldn't have been really a more tightly contested game. I remember saying when the air, listen, 67,000 people are telling you what it's like to be a champion.
Guy made the game-saving tackle on the 9-yard line.
Chuck, he and Bobby Freeman made the tackle, and they went down, and Chuck was on top of them.
And when I saw the clock go 0, I looked at him, I said, you can get up now, this effing game is over. That's the last championship team the Eagles ever had on that tackle. 1960, 9-yard line, Green Bay Packers.
The Iron Man, Chuck Bednarik, and the Eagles brought Philadelphia a world championship. 50 years later, it is indeed a golden anniversary and a golden memory. Following that championship victory, Coach Buck Shaw and quarterback Norm Van Brocklin both retired. Just like that, the book was closed. In so many ways, that 1960 season was like a genie that just magically appeared, and for 1 year granted Philadelphia its every football wish. 1 year, but we'll cherish it forever.
The game's over! The game's over! The Eagles are the champions of the world! Listen!
The euphoria that took place was just overwhelming, and I loved it. To this day, all the newspapers the next day were full of the whole story.
Winning the championship, we were very happy about it, and we knew that we deserved it. And I know when Bobby Walston and I carried Buck Shaw for maybe 20 yards, the thought ran through my mind is that how can a head coach winning the world championship at the time suddenly walk away from the game, which is what he'd planned to do, and did.
The game really went by in a flash. Most people don't have an opportunity to be a champion. It's just a great feeling that you can't imagine.
We were thankful that we won, and I think of a team that played like we did all year, come back, never give up, leaders on the field, Norm Van Brocklin, Chuck Bednarik, Tom Brookshire, Don Burrows, Pete Retzlaff, Clarence Peaks. Guys like that, how could we do it?
Here, right here. 1960 championship ring, right here, baby. This is it big time. This is what Vince Lombardi wanted, the Green Bay Packers, but the Eagles got it instead.
We were the only team ever to beat a Lombardi coach team in a championship. There were moments that people here have thought they'd never see, and they got to see it all in one day.
It made everybody a believer. That championship game got everybody into the world of football.
The people in the city of Philadelphia took us in, just offered us everything. Any place you went, they treated us tremendously.
I'm walking down the street and people said, "Hey, Tommy, way to go, McDonald." You know, I tell you, it was fantastic. I said, "Hey, you're the McDonald family too, buddy. You're an Eagle."
As a result of this game, the Eagles moved to the forefront of this city's sports consciousness. And they've remained there ever since, even though they left Franklin Field, even though they went through a horrible decade and a half after. They never lost that devoted core of fans. And as they got better, that devoted core of fans grew larger and larger until clearly this is one of the most popular franchises in the NFL here in 2010.
When we won the championship in 1960, that was it. And it all took off. And the passion of the football fan in Philadelphia, as far as I'm concerned, tops the ball. Nobody's near us. We're the best.